Brought to you by Knights of Awakening. This is the Labyrinth, and I, as always, am your host, Charles, bringing you new ways to look at yourself and magic and to think about what it means to be or not to be is really the question. Today we're going to discuss the question you will ask yourself more times in your life than any other question. Who are you? What are you? And what do you want to be? Now I'm going to hit on a couple different exercises, and I'll look over here once in a while. It's me looking at my other screen that has all of my wonderful information on it that I've used in the past to help me with this. And it's more just a collection of notes, but what we're going to be discussing is what you define yourself as, how you define yourself as a person, as a mystic, and the power this title has over you, or the power you invest into it. Most of us, myself included, go on the whole self-definition journey about once every couple years. Some of us once every couple months, myself included in that. I'm always trying to redefine who I am and to better understand it. Because at the end of the day, labels will always fall short. You call yourself a sorcerer, but then you've got to build a cabinet, so now you're a carpenter. You've got to repair a car, so you're a mechanic. You've got to work on a computer, so you're a computer repairman. You got to babysit a dog, so now you're a dog sitter. You know, whatever it is you define yourself as is always going to fall short. We need to get that out of the way first. Because in getting that out of the way, we recognize that we have to define how we want to be and how we want to progress. Now, the mystical community is inundated with an overload of titles, names, ideas, ways of describing ourselves. And that just shows how important the self-definition question is. Now, with that, the thing we have to look at is how can we better help ourselves to define ourselves? How can I help you in your self-definition quest? I have a couple tools that I use with my students. One of the first ones, and if you search for this online, you can find it, is the MISS archetypes, MYSS. MISS archetypes are really good for getting an idea of what the parts of you are. And this is an assignment I've given, I think, every single student I've ever had, or a variation of this assignment they've wound up with at some point. So I'm going to tell you how it works, and then I'm going to let you go out and do this, and I'm going to give an example of how you do this already in your day-to-day. So how this works, you go through this list of, what is it, 1,750, something like that. I don't know. It's not that many, but it's a lot of archetypes that define characters in stories, and see which ones apply to you. And I tell people, go through and, rate your top, like if you see one and you say, yeah, that's me, rate it 1 to 5, and then take all of your 1s and 2s and then resort those and rate those 1 to 5, and then do an exclusive listing so that no 2 can be 1. So no 2 types can be listed as 1, and then give me that list. And that helps me see what the person is, how they see themselves, and what components we're working with. That's good for you too. Let me give you a couple examples of these. Actor, addict, alchemist. The first 3 A's, okay? The actor is someone who performs, puts on a show for people. I would be remiss while doing this show to not say that I have the actor archetype. The addict is one who is drawn towards something not necessarily unhealthy, but that addicts them and that they have trouble shaking. Anybody who's over the average weight probably has the addict one or a gland issue or something like that, but a lot of us have the addict. How big of a part does it play in your day-to-day life, you know? The alchemist, one who changes things, they transmute. The great seeker of knowledge is in the physical manifestation realm, the potion maker. You'd be surprised how many people who brew tea and are tea aficionados would fit into the alchemist. Let's look at some other ones. One that almost everyone has is the child, and the coward at times. Almost all of us have that at some point. Yes, even me. I know someone's going to go, even you, Charles? Yes, even me. I have things that scare me. I have things that put a cold, dark chill in my soul. Not many. Most things don't really scare me for long. Usually I go from a form of frightened to a form of angry. Where's the bully at here? The bully! There. And I become the bully instead if I get too fearful. So I try to rein in my fear before I can get to that point. Let's see here. The dictator. That's a good negative one. The dilettante. The hoity-toity. I'm the best of the best. The liberator. Bring others out of the muck. That's a good one. Most of you watching this right now, if you go through this whole list, you find the misarchetypes, you go through them, you rate them, and you go through this little exercise, or any list of archetypes, are going to pick the magician, as well you should. The magic user, the maker of things, strange and untold, wielder of hidden powers. Yes, I expect most of you should mark that down somewhere at a 3 at least on your 1 to 5 scale, and then when you redo it, I would hope that it was in the top 5. It might not be, though. This might be something you just do on the side. Maybe magician doesn't make it. Maybe that tells you more about where you should put your time. Not everyone is going to be a mystic. That's fine. Not all of you are cut out for it, and it's not cut out for all of you. So, no judgment here. The Knight. Almost as many of you will be on that list if you're watching my show. There's a good one. That you have to go and you have to save people. You're on a quest. Part of how you see yourself. Part of how you live in the world. I would expect many of you, myself included, to have Knight. If not at the top, then very close. Boy, that's a fight for me right there. You know, the magician and the Knight, and they just vie for dominance sometimes. Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal. The innovator, the one who makes different things happen. The inventor, in a sense. The mystic, a little bit less in control, but still very much mystical. Very much, going with the flow and understanding of things. The robot. If you're working a 9 to 5 right now in the modern society, and you do anything like retail or factory work, I would not hold anything against you listing that in your top 5. It puts a condition upon people mentally where they feel like a robot. You would be forgiven for that. In fact, a lot of times I tell people to make 2 lists. 1 positive and 1 negative, so they don't have the robot sitting there at the top. The sidekick. If you're one of those people that doesn't really take the lead, but always feels like you're backing people up and making things better, I could see that. I could see that. The wizard, very much like the magician, a little bit more classical, long beard kind of deal. The robes, probably not this hat, but yeah. The research magician, in a sense, the one who studies in depth. So that hits some of them. The rescuer, the redeemer. Is the Avenger on there? The Avenger! I had to say it. I had to get it recorded once doing the whole big booming voice deal with it. The hero voice. Yeah, the Avenger. That's one a lot of us. Right there with the bully. Okay. On the list that I have in front of me, Avenger is like right here, and then you've got a column of text below it, and then sitting right under it is the bully, and I'm like, wow, those two go together sometimes. Yeah, those positives have negatives, folks. Good way to define yourself. Help get an idea of who you are. Why do you want to know who you are? Because if you don't know who you are, you don't know who you're going to be. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. You have trouble finding things. You do this all the time already. And I'm going to tell you how. You watch a movie. You watch a television show. And you go, that's me right there. That's me. That's me. I'm Frodo. I'm Gandalf. I'm Aragorn. I'm Gimli. If you're like me, you're one of those people that is very multifaceted. I always joke with my friends that I'm a jackass of all trades. That may be more truthful than I like sometimes. You go through and you try to pick certain parts. I'll say this, I never really felt like I was Frodo. But you go through something like the Lord of the Rings and you go, that's me, I'm Gimli. I feel like I'm a cross between Gimli and Gandalf. That is accurate for me. On the one hand, I do feel that a lot of problems in this world can be solved with hitting it with an axe. I have a very dry sense of humor, very gruff, very rough and tumble, very prideful, very mystical, very likely to lead people. That's the other side. Very likely to solve problems with ways unexpected. Short temper. Yeah, definitely Gandalf-like. Yeah, I could definitely see myself in those characters. You go and you do this too. You may not all do this. If you are that one rare person who doesn't see yourself in any fictional characters, good for you. The problem, of course, becomes if you conflate the character with the reality. None of you are going to go Super Saiyan. For those of you who identify with Goku, or throw a Hadouken for the Ryu fans out there. And green rocks won't stop you, Superman. But bullets probably will. Yeah. It's one thing to identify and use these things to help gain your footing. It's another to be boxed in and then to become delusional about them. So be wary of that little trap. You know, the Labyrinth started as a show trying to help you avoid traps and magic. Avoid that trap. Please. I don't have time to dig you out of that one. I'll make time. I don't have time. So this is one of those exercises. So one, I run my students through, because after we do this, they're like, well, I know who I am now. What kind of magical worker should I really be? And I'm like, oh, God. What kind of magical worker should you really be? Well, I don't know. What calls to you? These discussions usually take the better part of a century or two to get through with people. Well, there's this and there's that, and I like all of these things, and invariably, every single practitioner becomes a kid in a candy store. Yeah. Well, I want to do it all. And then I kind of have to be like, so you want to do it all poorly? Yeah, I want to do it all, but like good, like you do it all good. And I'm like, you think I do everything good? Wow. I feel so blessed that you're blind and don't see me. No one does it all good, okay? Despite my attire being a little on the dark side and thematic, I have less skill in voodoo than at least 10 people I know by name. Probably less skill in voodoo, hoodoo, Santeria, than anyone I know who does magic in those fields. It's not that I don't know what they are. I can identify them. I know the methods. I don't do it. I don't work with it, so I don't have power with it. Runes, on the other hand, now that I know. Oh, that do I know. Better than probably anyone else I know. Directed energy work, willing things into existence through sheer force of will, intuitive magics, sigil creation through intuitive magic. Yeah. Yeah, I think I've got that down pretty well. And that starts to get to be my point. You want to do everything, but you can't do everything. No one can do everything. So then we got to narrow this sucker in. The only reason I'm doing this show is that I've done this exercise 3 times this week for 3 different people. And I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, man, I really want to do a show on this. But it seems so silly and corny, this next part that's coming up. The rest of that last part, because it was dealing with archetypes and stories and such, seemed pretty serious, didn't it? Yeah. The next part's going to seem very silly and stupid. Yep, but it's more useful than the last for your purposes as a mystic. And they said, do it. Do the show anyway. Why? Is it helping your students, this exercise? Yes. Then do it anyway. Okay, fine. Screw it. I'm doing it. So, after that, I usually send people over to a game website. Not an MMO, but a pen and paper role-playing game one. Pathfinder game. It's based on the D20 system. What I love about this is that this entire system is in the general public license, so I can read it word verbatim, some of this on the air. And no one can get me in trouble because they hold the original copyrights and it's under the D20 license. And I'm making that clear now. Wizards of the Coast. And you're allowed to reproduce it as well. And you can look up that license. So by having just said that, I'm in the clear. I'm in the clear to use this. And because it's something that's public domain effectively, well, not quite, general user license, but GNU, basically public domain, I can get it to people, they can print it out, they can use it, they can reference it, and they're never going to be cut off from having this resource. So, before I go any further on this, why something based off of Dungeons and Dragons? Why, Charles, why? Because this has already had more impact on your idea of what magic users do than you realize. Maybe a little more than I realize. If I told you to describe a wizard, you would talk of spell books and staves and wands and various other implements, wands and rods and staves, mighty staves. Research and books. I don't actually have a book nearby that I can grab as a prop, which I'll get into what I am from my own perspective to a degree in a second. But if I ask you to think of a sorcerer, you'd say more innate, more magic that comes from them. They might have a couple tools on hand here and there to help direct it, but for the most part, it comes from within. The idea of having a book that they had to reference every time would be that wouldn't even be kosher. It certainly wouldn't be a sorcerer. So this has already impacted you because that division between wizard and sorcerer didn't happen because of any of us. It didn't happen because of me or any other great practitioner out there. We're not the ones who did it this time. Nope. Dungeons and Dragons did. They divided a line between wizard and sorcerer early on. And this line was that wizards read and memorize their spells, producing them and then being able to use them throughout the day, having performed them. Very similar to a ritual magician. Sorcerers innately know a specific set of spells. They learn them, and once they learn them and they're in their blood, they can reproduce them time after time. It's more of a raw magic, and they can't learn new spells easily. They only learn them when they go up a level. They can substitute them out through retraining and things like that, but once they know a spell, they can cast it way more often and with more diversity. They're more naturals in a sense. They have the gift where they find a way to instill the gift within themselves or bring it out. But once that's done, power, versus intellect. Yeah, I didn't create that division. No one else created that division. Dungeons and Dragons created that division. So you're already operating under that limitation. And you didn't even really know it. You didn't know that it's affecting your view of magic because it permeated fantasy and it permeated fiction. And then as authors wrote and studied and created their methods, they too were pulled into it. And realistically, some of that is also because D&D pulled from other fiction, and they found that very barely divided line between the two. But for most of history, a wizard was one who did magic, and a sorcerer was one who did magic. And the difference didn't really compound as much. We could thank Merlin for the Book Red Wizard and the modern interpretations, but many of those came after Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings, which Lord of the Rings, your wizards in there looked a lot more like your sorcerers, except for a couple. You know, you had this divide between characters like Sauron and Gandalf. You know, that's, you know, one guy has a library and one guy has a staff. That divide's been happening in fiction for a little while. D&D took it, quantified it, and then people seeing this, they had a definition they could work with. A lot of great authors played D&D. It spread like wildfire. So how can we use this? Well, you can go through this class page, and I recommend you click on the little class link if you go to their SRD section, the D20 SRD. I think I'll even put a link in the description. Yeah, I'm going to put a link in the description of this. You can go to that, and they've got an entire section of classes, and you can go through, and don't worry about the mechanics. The mechanics are pointless for your purposes. So let's go take a look at Bard real quick. There's a section right at the top. It's what we call flavor text, okay? So the first two paragraphs that you got to deal with. The first section, and then where it says the role. I rarely ever read from a script, so pardon me. I hate scripts. I'm going to pull my window over here so I can... Untold wonders and secrets exist for those skillful enough to discover them. Through cleverness, talent, and magic, these cunning few unravel the wiles of the world, becoming adept in the arts of persuasion, manipulation, and inspiration. Typically masters of one or many forms of artistry, bards possess an uncanny ability to know more than they should, and to use what they learn to keep themselves and their allies ever one step ahead of danger. Bards are quick-witted, captivating, and their skills might lead them down many paths, be they gamblers or jacks of all trades, scholars or performers, leaders or scoundrels, or even all of the above, for bards every day brings its own opportunities, adventures, and challenges. And only by bucking the odds and knowing the most and being the best might they claim the treasures of each. Okay, that's the initial flavor text, and then under role it says, bards capably confuse and confound their foes, while inspiring their allies to ever greater daring, while accomplished with both weapons and magic. The true strength of bards lies outside of melee, where they can support their companions and undermine their foes without fear of interruption to their performances. I actually know a bard. An old student of mine classifies as a bard. Dude is a fantastic bard too. He doesn't always use it as much as I'd like in the communities that he's in, but he classifies as a bard, so that's good. My point, look at that. I just defined something for you. Not historically, not ancient magic of the bards. There are books for that. But I just gave you in a paragraph an idea of what that is. You can grasp that with that mind of yours now and decide if that's something you are or want to be. Have you ever been given such a gift before? Possibly. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm not going to make my whole video reading twice. I picked Bard. I'll go through Sorcerer and Wizard. Go Sorcerer first. Does this sound like you? Does this sound like what you want to be, what you want to do? I'm going to pre-course this with the whole innate bloodline statement that it's going to make. I think everyone has magic in their blood somewhere. I think that there's a hidden power inside of everyone, but you've got to find out which one it is. So if this is sitting there and you're one of those people that has doubt in yourself and you're like, I don't have any innate anything, I am worthless. Shut up. Shut up, because you're not, and you have it in there. It may not be what mine is. And they have a whole bloodline section that has flavor text, descriptive information you could use to give you a feeling. It's like divination, but without divination tools. All right, let's get to the text. Should have just left this up on the main screen. I've been smarter. Sorcerers, scions of innately magical bloodlines, the chosen of deities, the spawn of monsters, pawns of fate and destiny, or simply flukes of fickle magic. Sorcerers look within themselves for arcane prowess and draw forth might few mortals can imagine, emboldened by lives ever threatening to be consumed by their innate powers. These magic-touched souls endlessly indulge in and refine their mysterious abilities, gradually learning how to harness their birthright and coax forth ever greater arcane feats. Just as varied as these innately powerful spellcasters' abilities and inspirations are the ways in which they choose to utilize their gifts. While some seek to control their abilities through meditation and discipline, becoming masters of their fantastic birthright, others give in to their magic, letting it rule their lives with often explosive results. Regardless, sorcerers live and breathe that which other spellcasters devote their lives to mastering. And for them, magic is more than a boon or a field of study. It is life itself. Now it says under that role, this is the role that they play in day-to-day in the party, as it were. Sorcerers excel at casting a selection of favored spells frequently, making them powerful battle mages as they become familiar with specific and ever-widening set of spells. Sorcerers often discover new and versatile ways of making use of magics other spellcasters might overlook. Their bloodlines also grant them additional abilities, assuring that no two sorcerers are ever quite alike. Okay. Does that ring a bell to you? I'm sure someone out there watching this is going to go, wow. That kind of sounds like what I do. And this just helped you narrow down what you want to be, what you want to do. So let's go back, though. Let's look at a wizard real quick. Before we go this far, I'm going to read this description. Then I'm going to hit on why this division is so important, and a lot of these other things are in here too. Beyond the veil of the mundane hide the secrets of absolute power, the works of beings beyond mortals, the legends of realms where gods and spirits tread, the lore of creations both wondrous and terrible. Such mysteries call to those with the ambition and the intellect to rise above the common folk, to grasp true might. Such is the path of the wizard. These shrewd magic users seek, collect, and covet esoteric knowledge, drawing on cultic arts to work wonders beyond the abilities of mere mortals. While some might choose a particular field of magic to study and become masters of such powers, others embrace versatility, reveling in the unbound wonders of all magic. In either case, wizards prove a cunning and potent lot, capable of smiting their foes, empowering their allies, and shaping the world to their every desire. And then under role, while universalist wizards might study to prepare themselves for any manner of danger, specialist wizards research schools of magic that make them exceptionally skilled within a specific focus. Yet no matter their speciality, all wizards are masters of the impossible and can aid their allies in overcoming any danger. That sound like you? Can you see yourself with your nose in books poring over errata and information, spells and seals and sigils, old methods? Do you prefer to do things the old way whenever possible, modifying it only as needed to suit your method? Or do you prefer to create something new, pulled out from your own experiences, where the research is only there as a stepping stone to your own method? That's the dividing line between the wizard and the sorcerer. Probably within both the game and the mundane realm. So why is this exercise, going through these things and then getting an idea of who or what you are, so important? Why is it so useful, in my opinion? Because through definition, we find direction. And through that direction, we learn how to better ourselves. We really get a reason to train harder. We get an idea of where we're going, so we can put more time in, put more effort into becoming better. Now, anyone who knows me and hears about my training, when I tell you, what should you do? Meditate longer or train harder? Yeah, I'm probably a sorcerer. And I don't like the limits that these classes have in their games. Don't get me wrong. I always feel like when I'm playing a sorcerer in one of those games, I should have been a wizard, because that's what I'm more like in real life. There's not much I can't cast in real life. Whenever I'm playing a wizard, I should have been a sorcerer. Yeah. It's the nature of self-definition. Now I'm going to give you another thought, too. You're going to look through this at some point. If you like this idea, you want to do this exercise, you go through, you read all these things, you make yourself your list, you sort your list, you sort your list, you sort your second list, your third list, your fifth list. By the time you're done sorting all your lists, you come up, there's one sitting at the top. And it says something. I'm going to give you a thought. Don't take this too far to heart. You have never met a level 1 D&D character in your life. What? No one you have met, more than likely, is so skilled to be a level 1 Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder character. Yeah, they aren't. A level 1 monk in Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons hits as hard as swinging a club at someone. So if you hand them a club and they punch someone in the nose, it hits the same. Look, I boxed for a while. I got pretty good. I could fold a heavy bag with a hit. But if you handed me a club, I hit harder. The strongest man I know, the best fighter I know, hits harder if I hand him a club. He hasn't hardened his hands so that there's no difference to that degree. Just putting that out there. You get enraged and you gain this burst of oomph, and you can shrug off a little bit more. But in D&D terms, real life, you could shrug off an extra hit point. In D&D, you can shrug off, so many extra based on whatever, and you get damage reduction. No one does that in real life. You've never met anyone who can cast a cantrip from D&D. A ray of frost or a bolt of lightning. So don't let this weigh too much on how you see yourself either, or what you think you can and can't do. That's not the point of this exercise. It's to help you define your role in your life, where you want to go and where you're going. And here's the other list you can make. Make a list of which one you'd want to be. Doesn't have to match up. Yeah, I'm a sorcerer. On this list, if I went through all of this, oh gods, I'm gonna commit myself. Probably took a couple levels of cleric in there too at some point, but probably a sorcerer. Okay. I'd want to be a wizard, honestly. I'd love the idea of reading ancient tomes. I just can't find very many ancient tomes that have anything in them that sounds more like horse crap to me. Or more than horse crap. Most ancient books are, on the 8th day when the moon rises overhead, wait for the sign of an eagle to land, and it's horsepocky. In my opinion, we have learned more about magic in the past 200 years than we did in the past 2,000 before. And more has been lost since Christianity hit than was ever gained before that. So, and some people say I might fit into the shaman role too. I don't know. I'm whatever I need to be. But no, I go through this list too, and I redefine myself and get an idea of where I'm at and where I'd like to go. And I have my students do the same because it's a good way of getting an idea of who you are, who you want to be. Go through this. Get a feel for it. Make lists. See if that helps you a little. If it doesn't, sorry to have wasted a little over half an hour of your time and then whatever you put into this. But if it does help you, that's fantastic. Drop us a comment. Email us at knightsofawakening@gmail.com. Cuss me out on YouTube. Tell me what you think of me. If it doesn't help. Oh, and if you liked this at all, if this made you think about how we define ourselves and it got you thinking, it gave you something to do, like, share, and subscribe, folks, because that will mean more people get helped by this episode. I do these episodes so that I can take things that I've said and not have to say them again and again. I think this episode is really spot on. I think it's way longer than I like to have an episode, honestly. I like 20-minute episodes. It's 37. So with that, I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter. I want to thank you all for joining us. And remember, awaken the night within.